So now that you have your batter prepared and it's been chilled overnight, you need to get it piped into prepared pans. And the way to do that is with a soft, narrow, natural bristle pastry brush and some melted butter. A thin, even coating is what you need to do, and you need to get every crack and crevice of the pan so that your Madeleine batter won't stick. I'm flipping the order of the pans because the oldest is solidified, and that's the one I'm going to start with when I do the second coat. Working clean is very important to me, and you'll see that I always pull off at the same point. Now this butter is reusable, but it needs to go into a clean deli labeled with today's date so that it's food safe and into the cooler. In order to keep a gluten-free baked good gluten-free, you have to butter and line the pans with tapioca starch or something that does not contain wheat or gluten. Tapioca starch gets poured in and tapped out, and then each pan goes into the cooler so that it can get firm for a minimum of 30 minutes. The degree to which you take caution with using and avoiding wheat is to the degree that the person consuming this product either has a sensitivity or an allergy, and you need to find out before you deliver any food to somebody who has a serious concern. When storing this tapioca starch, it has now been contaminated with, when we reuse it, dairy. So if it's going to go to somebody who has a dairy allergy, you can no longer use this particular dusting powder, so it just needs to be labeled and separated out. I made 2 batters, 1 chocolate buckwheat and 1 pistachio, and the pistachio was runny at the start. It's been in the cooler overnight, but I chose to start with the chocolate and it was way too firm to work with. So I left it on the counter and put the pan back in the refrigerator and moved on to the pistachio. And it intrigued me that it was still very loose. I went ahead and piped all of them and put them in the cooler to sit for 30 more minutes before they go in the oven. I ended up under baking them, and I have a lot of questions about this recipe, so I'm actually going to test it one more time, and I'll make another video explaining what I learned from that experience. But it tasted really good and it's very pretty, so I'm not gonna let it go. And when you see me pipe the chocolate, it's still very, very firm. So I'm squeezing the bag in the center, something I don't typically do. You'll also notice the way that I work is very, very clean. I don't like the batter to come out the other end. When you're piping and you want it to be even, use an internal counting system. 1, 2, 3, pull, 1, 2, 3, pull, and you can use this with anything you're piping. You'll tend to get a more even pipe. Constantly cleaning and making sure that everything is staying organized and clean means that my final product is going to be much nicer. The final goal is to get a nice bump in the middle and crispy edges, and using a pan like this helps. Silicone Madeleine pans aren't that great. They don't give you a crisp product. Now, you saw how the batter spread just a tiny bit in the cooler, and when I pulled it out, it's sticking. So I have a lot of thinking to do about this recipe. They looked pretty, they didn't have a very big bump, and they were definitely underbaked, which is not good. I'm not sure how I'm going to utilize these, but I went ahead and dusted them with some 10X and put them in a bowl and set them aside while I waited for the star of the show, which was the beautiful chocolate buckwheat Madeleine. The bump is not as large as I would like. I think the batter could have sat at room temp just a little bit longer to be a little more flowy. This is what I call an heirloom recipe. It is so fabulous and moist for days. I wrapped it up beautifully and gave it to a neighbor who has celiacs. And because people with celiacs don't get many sweet desserts, it almost brings tears to their eyes. It's very important.